This is a CBC podcast.
Danse, Anine, Bonjour, hello and welcome. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I'm Rosanna Dearchild. The economic and social impact of the COVID-19 outbreak is profound. Businesses are closing, workers are being laid off. The financial instability is palpable. It's hitting artists and creative types especially hard. For musicians and performers, writers and artists, if they don't get their work out to an audience, they don't get paid. Today on Unreserved, making art in a time of quarantine. With the closure of theaters and nightclubs and the cancellation of concert tours and book signings, artists releasing new material right now are facing unprecedented challenges and taking significant financial hits. Lakota hip-hop artist Frank Waln tweeted, "Just had a handful of gigs postponed due to the virus. Literally all of my spring rent postponed. All my fellow self-employed, self-made Indigenous artists who live gig check to gig check, who have to provide, who are worried, who are hurting right now. I feel you and I see you." The making of a book can take years, from concept to finished product. Still ahead, how one author is dealing with her book's release right in the middle of a global pandemic.
I know for myself, but I know a lot of authors. We're just sort of finding out new ways to get the books out and the word out. And, I want to read the story so bad, and I want to talk about it, and I want to hug people, and I want to touch kittens, and I have to not do any of it, and it's hard.
Carol Lindstrom, author of We Are Water Protectors, will join me in just a few minutes. But first, it started on March 5th and was supposed to wrap up on April 25th, a tour with stops in 31 cities to promote their latest album, Warrior Down. But after only a couple of shows, Whoopso climbed back in the van and headed home. Frontman Adam Sturgeon joins me from self-isolation in Sarnia, Ontario. Hello, Adam.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So tell me, where were you when you made the call to head home?
We were in New York City, one of the epicenter stops, so a little bit of risk taken there, I suppose, but things seemed to unfold very quickly once we were there. We decided that the best case scenario was to get back over the border, go to our sort of personal isolation zones, and just take all the necessary precautions.
And exactly where are you right now?
I'm just outside of Sarnia on Lake Huron in a small place called Kamalaki.
And why are you there?
Well, a bandmate's family was in a similar position to ours, so we were able to kind of self-isolate together. Because I have a toddler at home, there was a lot of different concerns between daycare and et cetera. So I'm not able to get home to my family just yet. Better safe than sorry.
How long are you going to be in self-isolation?
We'll do this for the recommended 2 weeks.
That must be very difficult for you.
It's challenging, of course, but as long as the Wi-Fi signal, which is just on the fritz, is okay, we'll be able to FaceTime. I feel for my partner at home because we've got a real wild child going crazy, playing basketball and pulling things off the walls. But I have really great support, and I'm really thankful for her right now, too.
Now, there's a lot of effort that goes into planning a tour, rehearsing, getting ready, booking time off. How did you feel when those cancellations started to add up?
Well, as you can understand, it is disappointing, of course, and this was one of our bigger forays, one of our larger tours, and our first tour of the U.S., which we've been working towards for several years, and we really waited and took our time trying to make sure that we were going to go on the best possible tour that we could. All that said, there are much more important things in life, such as our health and well-being, and we're all really level-headed about it, and we know that we'll make all the necessary changes to make sure that when we can get back on the road, we'll do so in a good way. So, we're pretty okay with things.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're talking about the financial impact of canceled tour dates and unsold merchandise and all of this stuff. The two places bands make most of their money. What does this canceled tour mean for your band financially?
Well, I think for the band, we're in an okay place. No huge losses, but of course the implications trickle down. So we feel for the booking agents who maybe are losing the wages. We have to pay off our record a little bit, and so the lost sales do have an effect on us. But what is more challenging for artists in our positions are making light of our personal lives. Mm. So the types of jobs that we have outside of our music careers, and most all of us do have to have jobs outside of music. Those are where the struggles become palpable, and so the lost wages here are challenging. Mm-hmm. But again, we're dealing with it in a good way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Stay safe, everybody.
You too. Whoopso was supposed to be heading for South by Southwest in Texas, then playing shows across the U.S. and Canada until the end of April. But all their tour dates and festival appearances were canceled. Jeremy Dutcher was supposed to kick off a series of Quebec dates on March 20th, but when those shows were canceled, he did the next best thing and live-streamed a performance from his living room. So in honor of all the unscanned ticket barcodes and canceled tour dates, let's go back to a simpler time, when we caught up with Jeremy Dutcher live in concert at the Spirit Song Festival in St. John's back in November. This is Sakamawit. Recorded live at this Spirit Song Festival in St. John's in November, that was Jeremy Dutcher and Sakamawit. Coldplay, Jan Arden, John Legend, and Jeremy Dutcher are just a few of the musicians entertaining housebound fans around the world by live streaming mini concerts from their living rooms. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. March 17th was a special day for Carol Lindstrom. It was the day her picture book, We Are Water Protectors, was released. Usually, when you release a new book, there's a launch party, signings, school visits, sometimes trips to book conferences. But when you release a book during an international pandemic, the typical ways to promote it disappear. With major international book fairs canceled, schools shut down, and some bookstores closing, it's a tricky time to be promoting new work. Carol Lindstrom joins me to talk about releasing We Are Water Protectors at this very unusual moment in time. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
So tell me, what inspired the story?
I just call it my love letter, really, to Standing Rock and to Indigenous peoples everywhere, because it really was inspired by when the camp was set up at Standing Rock, which was April of 2016. It wasn't much in media. Social media was doing a lot with it, but it wasn't in the mainstream media. So, I was doing my best to share it with people I knew, my networks, so people were just kind of made aware of it. But I wanted to do more. So I thought, now is a good time to write a book about it.
And for those who are not familiar with Standing Rock, can you just tell us briefly what that was?
Standing Rock Lakota, or Standing Rock Sioux tribe, as many people know the name as. Their tribal lands are in North Dakota. And there was a pipeline that was being routed from the Bakken oil fields, which is in North Dakota, down through Standing Rock, through their home, sacred burial grounds. The water, of course, which when the pipeline leaks, not a matter of if, it's when, because they do leak. Standing Rock Sioux put the camp up there decided to raise awareness that way, and it just kind of grew from there. I mean, it became something where there's over 500 tribal nations, and they all joined in to stand against the pipeline.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And can you tell us a little bit about what your story is about?
It's a story that I felt like just making people aware of what is at stake. The land, the water, trees, plants, us, all the animals. It's affects us all when the water is, when we mistreat it. And it's not just an Indigenous issue. It's an every person issue. So that's why I, felt this book was so needed. The illustrations are by Tlingit illustrator Michaela Goad, and they are quite beautiful. Vibrant colors, beautiful message, and as you said, a timely teaching. What was it like, working with Michaela on this book? Oftentimes in the publishing industry, when you write picture books, the illustrator and author don't often communicate between each other. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes the author has the story, the text, and then the publisher will find the illustrator, and then it's a sort of a separate thing. But because this story, there's over 500 tribal nations in the United States, and so we're all different. We have different cultural elements, cultural ways of being. Everything's different amongst our tribes. So it was important that Michaela, and she knew to get it right, we needed to talk about things. So kind of at first, we talked between the two of us. We didn't even tell the publisher, but then we were like, we're going to have to tell her. And then she said, well, I was hoping you guys were going to talk. It was magical, really, to see, when I got to see the sketches come to life, to see what she made from my words. It was really, it's amazing. Her work is just a work of art, really. Mm-hmm. Now, people might not know how long it takes to get a picture book out in the world. How long has this book been in the works? Oh, gosh, that's so true. Well, I would say I sold a picture book in February of 2018. So about 2 years it took for mostly, like the illustrations, I would say probably take about a year, So, yeah, about 2 years. So by that time I feel like, has this book been out yet? And what were you planning in terms of promotion for the book? Oh, golly. family. So many things.
So many things.
Last week was the hardest because my publicist, I love her dearly, Mary. She has just been so wonderful, and I know it's hard for them too because they have had to deal with all these changes. But it was almost every day an email. Well, this is canceled. Well, this is canceled, and the book launch, and then at some book festivals, there was the Virginia Festival with the book, and then just several conferences coming up that I had. I was also planning to go to Standing Rock, and that's the thing that really hurts me the most is missing that. Yeah, I really wanted to. My amazing publisher was able to get us to, Michaela and I both, to go to the visit the elementary schools and do presentations there, and also a family presentation, because that's really, that was like, my heart was so happy. But we're going to do it. We definitely plan to do it. It just will be maybe in the summer, whenever all this stuff, ends and so forth. But yeah, it's just been pushed back a little bit. That's all. I keep telling myself.
Yeah. Now, we've been hearing from musicians dealing with canceled tours. Do you have a sense of what this all means for your book besides, pushing back dates?
I know for myself, but I know a lot of authors. We're just sort of finding out new ways to get the books out and the word out. And, I want to read the story so bad, and I want to talk about it. So, I did a video of me reading the book, and some other authors are collecting a bunch of videos from authors, and there's activities, things for children and teachers to do for the children while they're home, because we feel so passionately about them. And it's so hard to, especially for me, I want to talk and I want to hug people and I want to touch kids, and I have to not do any of it, and it's hard. So I can't wait till I can do it.
This book is specifically about water, about pipelines, which is, of course, a timely topic already in Canada, but there's a message in it that relates to what the whole world is kind of dealing with in terms of this pandemic. In it, you write, "We are all related." Why is this message so important to keep in mind, especially now?
Gosh, I've never ever had time to, really stop and kind of focus on inwardly, outwardly, just somehow take a few moments to quiet your mind and just, see how we're connected to each other, how this virus can connect us and make us all change our lives. I mean, we are connected. Everything one person does affects another. It affects the animals. It affects the plants. It affects the planet. Just like the climate crisis, it's all related. We are related. So I feel it's so important to really now think about trying to be less selfish, trying to be more self-aware of each other and our place in the world and our place with each other, and to just maybe center ourselves a little bit more and just maybe focus a little bit more on that kind of thing, and how when this will be over, but when it is over, to keep try to hold on to that mindset that we are all related and everything we do affects each other. And that's, one thing as Native peoples, or at least I can speak for my Ojibwe, is we look at the 7 generations. We don't ever think about things for now. When we make decisions, it's how is this going to affect the next 7 generations. So not my children, my children's children, my children's children's children. So that, again, sort of gives you a sense of how small you are and what your place is, and how everything you do has to, it's a ripple effect, and it affects everyone.
Well, thank you so much for that message and for your time today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
We Are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Goad, is out now. If you'd like to see some images from the book, head to our site, cbc.ca/unreserved. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. Coming up, 2 siblings asked Indigenous artists across the country how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting them.
We had people report, losses of, up to and exceeding $10,000 to date. But beyond that, people expect to lose more, and they fear for the future of their industries as a whole.
More on that and how you might be able to help coming up. Earlier this week, we posted on Twitter looking for musicians about to release music now left with few ways to promote it. One of the artists we heard from was Tristan Grant, who performs as Wolf Castle.
I am 23 years old right now. I started doing hip-hop when I was 14 years old. I started writing music, and I got really, really into it. I used to make rap songs with my uncle and my cousin at my grandmother's house. I grew up on the Reserve, and I live there currently. So I had some goals in 2020 to kind of expand and kind of help I just wanted to grow a lot more in terms of live performance and reaching out and connecting with fans. And I've actually never gone on my own official Wolf Castle tour. I've hopped on other tours, but this year I was I want to do my own tour, and it's going to be this summer for the rest of the year. And I already had 2 dates that I was doing. I had one in April, which has now been canceled. And I'm not sure about one that I have in July. Again, that one's a little more uncertain, but again, I really don't know. And I have a new EP coming out that was going to be, or it will be combined with the tour. I'm still planning on a summer release. So as it stands right now, I don't think that will be affected too much. However, I was going to put out a single next week, and I've just canceled that because I won't have a show around it I don't have any plans around it now because they were all just kind of canceled and fell through because of this. It's a little discouraging, but yeah, those were my plans, which now I'm currently kind of trying to figure out while self-isolating at home. I think the best thing to do is to, again, stream the music if you can, buy the music, or if any Indigenous artists out there have merchandise, buy that merch, stream your favorite artists, support them, and keep everyone's numbers up, because this is a really tough time, especially since we're not able to go out there in the world and meet you in person or perform for you. And that hurts a lot, because as artists, we do so much work and it's so grating and difficult. And the best part about all of it is performing in front of people and connecting on that level. And now we just are in a place where we're not able to do that. So that really hurts.
This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169 and Native Voice 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. Much of Hunter and Jacqueline Cardinal's work as an Indigenous consulting firm has been put on hold as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which made the siblings realize many of the artists, tourism companies, and venues they work with might be out of work too. So they decided to try to quantify those losses through surveys and conversations with the Indigenous artists affected. Hunter and Jacqueline join me from Edmonton to tell us what they've learned. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you for being here. So tell me a little bit about the survey and who you hope to reach.
Yeah, well, we've been hoping to reach artists and cultural practitioners that have been affected by COVID-19 on events, on tourism, has been very impactful. And a lot of artists and those cultural practitioners, elders, people who work in tourism, are really starting to feel the hit now, but are also looking towards the future and are feeling very uncertain.
Mm-hmm. And the survey itself, what kinds of questions are you asking?
Oh, we're asking a wide variety of questions to really get the sense of what is the impact that COVID-19 has had on these Indigenous artists to date. And because of that, what supports do they need? And we're talking about supports, once again, not just from a Western perspective, but what we're really trying to do is get an understanding of, okay, we as Indigenous artists, what do we uniquely need? Because yes, we do need financial support, 100%. But what about the cultural supports that we need, the connections to community, the connection to home communities, to elders, to knowledge keepers, and to other Indigenous artists and cultural practitioners has been deeply impacted and in some cases severed. There are many people saying, I wish I could speak with Indigenous elders, knowledge keepers, so that I could ground myself now, so I can remind myself of the values that I I need to be holding closer during this time, but also messages of hope, of history, of we will get through this and we have gone through this before. A lot of those stories do rely with our elders and our knowledge keepers. And of course, it's very difficult to engage with them in a meaningful way and in a personal way when you have to self-isolate or risk their well-being.
And I also understand you had a roundtable discussion.
Yes, we did.
What did you find then?
I think that people are really struggling. We're hearing a lot of stories, actually a couple from actually overseas who are struggling to get back into the country. They went out, across the globe to go and represent us as Canadians, as Indigenous people, and they're struggling to get back home. And the amount of anxiety there is massive. We had people report, losses of, up to and exceeding $10,000 to date. But, beyond that, people expect to lose more, and they fear for the future of their industries as a whole. So, when are the theaters going to open? We just don't know. Mm.
And what does this mean for the industry as a whole, do you think? Do you think there's going to be long-term ripples effect?
Indigenous artists, it's not like we were in, a fantastically secure place prior to this outbreak. Many artists were already in a quite tenuous position. So being put through this kind of pressure, this type of crucible, if you will, that's really putting a lot of artists in a place where, a lot of don't have savings. We had a couple people talk about how, because of their dedication to their artistic practice, they don't have other kind of employment to fall back on when their shows were canceled, when their galleries were closed. And that was something that was really impactful for me because, again, as we run a consultancy and we were being impacted, we have other work to do, but that's not the case with many other artists and cultural practitioners across the country. Why
did you want to embark on this survey?
Well, we've been following the outbreak quite closely since early February. I know my sister Jacqueline, actually, you've been following it a little bit earlier, since January. But since last Thursday specifically, we started to receive notifications from our clients and our workshop participants that they needed to cancel or postpone working with us due to it being declared a pandemic. So what we did was we called some of our mentors to ask for their help as our business was beginning to suffer. And we knew it was just the beginning. So a lot of the suggestions we were getting about how to get through this were really helpful. But then we began to notice that there were some things we knew that others couldn't do, especially in the arts community. Mm-hmm. And then Jacqueline had this great idea of we do public engagement. That is a way that we can help. And we know that it is important to have this data in the hands of people that make decisions. So we thought it made sense, really, to not wait for anyone to hire us to begin this process of bringing these Indigenous voices together. So we just started organizing. Mm-hmm. And the best way that we thought we could do this was through leveraging technology. And luckily, Jacqueline's an Indigenous technologist, so we found it to be very helpful in this situation.
Luckily, indeed. What are you hoping to do with the information once you've gathered it all?
So I think essentially what we're really trying to do, we're going to be compiling all of the conversations that we've had, all of the wonderful input that we've gotten from the community. In the last couple hours, actually, we've started to get submissions every couple minutes. And we're hoping to gather all of that data and compile it into really tangible kind of requests to those that have the power to make change. So we're going to be seeking out, meetings, probably web meetings with those empowered to actually talk through and explain, this is what it looks like to help these, our artists and our people. And that's what we're hoping to do. And I think beyond that as well, though, we have found there's a real desire for Indigenous artists and culture practitioners to come together as a community across Turtle Island and really connect with one another. So we hope as well for to make that an available option for people to connect with one another too, because we've had over 150 people engaged so far, and we just started this on Saturday. So if we can, so if we can help in any way connect everyone who's responded with one another, just so we can have some sense of community and camaraderie, I think that's going to make a huge difference.
Aside from creating connection and community, which is something Indigenous people already do very well, what are you hoping in terms of any action will be taken to help artists and musicians and so on?
And I think that people have been making very clear requests for help actually across the board. I think that a a lot of Indigenous artists right now really clearly need some pretty immediate short-term financial relief. And one thing that we have noted that we were kind of interested by and surprised by in the data was that Indigenous peoples, especially our artists, they consider themselves, many are consider themselves responsible for multiple people in their family that goes, above and beyond just their children. So we asked the question, how many dependents do you have? And we tried to expand it even in the wording of the question so people could feel like they could respond with including their grandparents, their parents, perhaps like siblings that they help take care of. And we had people say that they were responsible for up to 12 family members and friends. And so we needed to, I think what's really important is that we want to stress in our findings to those in power that if you help one Indigenous artist, you're not just helping that one Indigenous artist. You're also helping lift up often, basically a community. And so are there levels of government that have expressed interest in seeing your data? Actually, many orders of government seem quite interested and very excited about getting their hands on some real tangible data. Most notably, the federal government. I know that they're really interested in how do they support Indigenous communities at this time, and being able to access these informal networks that we have across Turtle Island of Indigenous artists and culture practitioners is a really important part of that. So the federal government's been very interested. Provincially, we have had some interest as well in Alberta and municipally too. So all orders of government are very keen to get their hands on something to work with. They really want to be putting forward solutions that actually are solutions as defined by the community. Absolutely. Well, thank you both for your time and for this amazing effort that you've put out. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's Jacqueline and Hunter Cardinal, co-founders of Neheyawin, an Indigenous consulting agency in Edmonton. That's it for this week's episode of Unreserved. We'll be back in this radio space next week for more community culture and conversation. If you want to learn more or share any of the stories you heard on the show today, you can find them on our website at cbc.ca/unreserved. This episode was produced by Kyle Musica, Stephanie Cram, Zoe Tennant, and Anna Lazowski. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at unreserved@cbc.ca or find us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm your favorite cousin, Rosanna Deerchild, coming at you from Winnipeg in Treaty 1 territory. Thank you for listening to Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. Egosay.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.